Muted. Let's start again. Welcome back, everyone. Tom Grisafi. You're listening to the Ag Bull Podcast, Ag Bull Media, Ag Bull Trading. This is Wiesemeyer's Perspectives. We are coming into January hot. USDA report Monday. Jim's going to have some color on that. We got a lot of things to talk about. Jim's been traveling. I can't wait to see how he hears, from real folks in agriculture, what they have to say, how they're feeling. A lot of confusion about a lot of things, a lot of concern, and hopefully Jim helped get some of that clear with folks. With that, let's bring him in the show here after I play this little video. Handsome alert, Mr. Wiesemeyer, coming up in the next 30 seconds. Mr. Jim Wiesemeyer, how you doing, sir?
Well, I've been a traveling man. Earlier in the week, I went to Bonita Springs, Florida, 81 degrees, by the way. There was beautiful. American Soybean Association leadership meeting. Always like meeting with the soybean, grower groups there and my good friends in the soybean industry. And good weather, lots of questions, and they just thought their payment rate for soybeans, which they thought was too low, Tommy, relative to the bridge assistance loan program, and they think USDA didn't adequately factor in that a lot of farmers were forced to sell at lower prices, and that would have changed the payment rate. So a little disconcern there. They were appreciative of that, the aid. And some other aspects, they know that they got to pump up the domestic utilization of soybeans because we've got some trade policy issues in the soybean industry, not just China. And I told them, I said I had some good news for them when I spoke to them, because this coming week, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, is meeting with 8 separate groups relative to the 45Z program. Now, what does that mean? There's a little progress. Maybe we'll start getting shortly thereafter. Maybe, I know by the end of this month, we should finally get some tax decisions of how the 45Z program, sustainable aviation fuel, is going to be implemented, at least for 2025. Regretfully, I think they won't detail the other years, 2026 to 2029, until late in the first quarter of this year. Yeah, you are later, maybe as late as June of this year. So that's not good news for the sector there. But bottom line from the soybeans, they're raring to go for the new crop. The Bridge A program helped, but they need more help from the marketplace. Then later in the week, I spoke to ProAg Services. That's the Pam Vipon group. It was standing room only. I stayed at a place I had never been to, and the Detroit Lakes area in Minnesota. I loved I would spend my own money to go back there. I mean, it was, and they had some hole in the wall bars I would have loved to attend, but didn't have the time. But it was a beautiful town, and I hear you told me it's 3 times the population in the summer.
Quadruples, yeah. Detroit Lakes, 15,000 people, goes up to 50,000, and they have all types of concerts, and they have a big summer fest out there called We Fest, and they get all the big names from Nashville. It's a good time, good people. Jim, real quick, in North Dakota, we really don't have lakes. I mean, we have Detroit Lake, but that's more of a deep, fishing lake. It's not something you pontoon on so much as to go water skiing, but North Dakota doesn't really have lakes, so almost everyone, goes to Minnesota, depending on where you are in the state. And then if you don't have a lake house, you want to be friends with someone who has a lake house. So the best boat you could own is your friend's boat. You bring the beer and stuff and go from there.
I learned that a long time ago from actually a cotton producer. He said one of the secrets is don't own your own boat. have a friend who owns one, and you save a lot of money that way.
We'll be talking about Minnesota a lot in this episode. If you watch about Minnesota on the news, you think it's crazy. When you go to Minnesota, they're the best people in the world. They're the most wholesome people in the world. Some of my best friends. I mean, you got to be careful on. They're talking about certain areas and certain cities, everything else. Anyway, Minnesota, a hot spot. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, let's get in the show real quick before we get in the show. Let's not bullshit anyone. If they want to see Wiesemeyer stuff, they go right to the Ag Bull website. And as fast as Jim's putting that out, we're getting it there. Just hired another young broker and media guy. He's going to be really getting a lot of updates out on the website. If you like the content we're producing, most of the content Tom Grisafi and Ag Bull Media are producing now is premium content. I'm throwing this ad out there in the beginning because if you're like, I'm clicking, I can't get anything. It says I'm not a subscriber. You need to subscribe, $25 a month, $250 annually. Wiesemeyer stuff is free. And that's because Jim and I sponsor the show. Now, as they say, sometimes free's too expensive, Jim. You ever heard that saying? Sometimes free's too expensive.
Well, I had a number of Minnesota growers say that they listened to the podcast and they were very appreciative. And even of you, Tommy, that you bring the market perspective. So I wanted to bring that back to you.
Thank you. And, right now, today, I'm in Mayville, North Dakota. It is Sunday. I have an office here at First State Bank. Big shout out to the folks at First State Bank. They're great. They do charge me rent, but I still love them. And I'm here in Mayville, North Dakota. I just went to a shout out to Elliott Cattle. I went to Clifford, North Dakota, and watched Elliott have a great sale. They had some bulls and some heifers. They went for good money, Jim. They went for really good money. There was no shortage of people raising their hands, and DV Auction had that. All right, let's get to business here because we're going to talk cattle. We're going to talk Minnesota. We're going to talk so much. But first and foremost, tomorrow's the big bad USDA. I'm going to disappear. We're going to go full screen on you because you are the man with the plan. Tell us what the market's going to do tomorrow at 11 o'clock, Jim. Easy questions first, sir.
We're going to know because that could be one of the more important days of the whole marketing year, because that's when we're going to get the annual summary on corn and soybeans. A yield cut is very likely for corn. Depends on who you talk with. The average Bloomberg survey was about 2 bushels an acre, although there are some people down 4 bushels per acre. And there's your dividing line, Tommy, between a neutral report, I think, is down 2 bushels. A more friendly report is if you're down 4 bushels, and we're going to see. And important, and we're also going to get grain stocks out of there. But the important variable is going to be feed and residual use in that first quarter.
That's that ruler they move back and forth, right? That's their fudge number.
Yeah. And historically, well, the grain stocks report, it's probably the weakest survey of all the surveys USDA does. And because it's on farm stocks and in transit, it's hard to peg, but about 40% of the annual feed and residual demand occurs between September and November. So that makes tomorrow's report of usage a key test. So once we see the number, we can go from there. We're going to see whether or not, and you also have to watch harvested acres, because they can fiddle around with the harvest, not just yield. They can affect the harvested acreage as well, and the demand, as we said, both feed and exports. That's corn. So, but that's a big focus on the corn. Soybeans, average trade guest sees it down just a little bit because pod weights appeared a bit light, but they don't see much from the November yield estimate was 53 bushels per acre. So some people see just a 0.3 bushels. I mean, that's a rounding error to me. So we're going to see on soybeans. I think corn will be the leader of this report. Wheat, corn's going to likely still lead the price direction. Wheat stocks are going to be updated. They'll play a secondary role. Most people tell me most anticipate wheat stocks near 1.64 billion bushels. That would be above last year's. So exports are running at a 5-year high for wheat. A lot of people don't know that, with large domestic and global supplies continue to put a governor on prices. So you can only go up so far in the wheat market before that wheat overhanging world wheat market gets at you. What's the bottom line, Tommy, on this?
Mm-hmm.
Corn yield revisions and early season demand, especially that feed and residual use, are the key drivers of Monday's report to watch. Soybeans look for stable markets, barring a surprise. Wheat prices are likely to follow corn's lead anyway, rather than set their own direction.
Very good. Let's go to national NCGA corn outlook, and you had some really nice charts for this, Jim.
Yeah, well, let's step through them because they're economists. Let me see. I'm going here. Let me see. I'm pulling up my notes here.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll read off this chart. It says corn
Yeah,
planted acres from pattern in recent years. We got year 20, 21, 22, 23, 24,
yeah.
25, and 26P. I imagine that means perspective, right?
Yeah, and you can see them going down a little bit. Now, this is just USDA's baseline projections, but the rising US and global supplies are going to continue to pressure prices absent a demand shift. But the soybean and corn price ratio currently favors corn again. If that continues, you're only going to have modest acreage cuts in the corn. That's kind of what this shows, and we show the corn, the soybean to corn price ratio, and it has to clearly favor soybeans before you get what we know to be a significant shift from corn into beans. Corn producers love planting corn.
They do.
I don't know many things in ag, but that's one I'm sure of. You can. I remember Merrill Oster, the originator, the farmer of a pro farmer, when he was building a new home in the 70s. That goes way back. Just a little, really brief here. He had a big picture window, and it was looking out to the corn fields. But when the builder saw that it was going to be there, he switched it to the other side. He didn't think that Merrill would just want to look at corn growing, but that's exactly what he wanted. So they had to put the picture window right back so he could see the corn growing. That's a corn producer right there.
That's a good story, Jim.
Yeah,
I like
it
that.
is. It is.
Is there any more color on these charts here? This corn acre signal soybean
Nope.
corn price
We
ratio.
go right to the other cost. The driver of the cost side is the fertilizer. Because why? Fertilizer accounts for around 1/3 of corn operating costs. So even small swings can affect the margins for corn. That's why you have to watch those fertilizer prices. And wherever I go to speak, Tommy, and I know you hear it as well, what's going to happen to fertilizer in the future and things like that. But here's a little long-term policy thing. I know there are some farm policy experts looking at the farm bill of the future, in which they can build in a protection tool in Title I that would at least take into consideration input cost. Now, I don't know how they do that, but I'm telling you, I don't think the farm bill of the future is going to look anything like the farm bill of the past, and that's a good thing. So we've had continued years of input cost being high to relatively high, and now you're going to see that delve into a farm bill discussion for the future. That's my policy spin on that one. The next one is farm finances. Look at that. It shows the working capital has eroded. We have tighter credit conditions, and that's raising financial risk heading into this year's crop. And you can see it right there in that chart. The corn price dropped substantially more than the cost to produce. In other words, we're underwater in many producers, not all, but most. And that's why we have this bridge loan, Tommy, because we have to get enough cash flow in order to plant that crop until we get hopefully higher prices from the real market. And if not, then we get that big ARC or PLC payment in October of this year.
That's unbelievable. The money's just not enough, Jim. I talked to a client in Texas, and he said, I said, hey, you got a nice payment for your, I'll jump in here real quick. I said, hey, you got a nice payment for your cotton. He goes, yeah, the only problem is my wife and I both maxed out just on the cotton we planted. We planted a ton of corn, some beans. We didn't get any money for corn. We didn't get any money for beans. That you
Yeah.
hit that cap so quickly.
Yeah,
And
you
what
did.
it's going to do, it's going to make everybody, if someone has a heartbeat, they're going to call themselves a farmer, a son, a daughter-in-law, and they're just going to keep setting up entities. I mean, either raise the money or, do something. Also, I'll send you the email. A nice man, he emailed into the Agbo website and he gave me beautiful compliments to you and I, everything else. But he said the wheat was off from when it was planted this year. 25 crop isn't getting a payment because it was planted. I was a little lost, to be honest with you. I didn't know how to tell him. I didn't have a damn clue what he was talking about. I understood what he meant, but I'm not a crop insurance guy. I'm not a legislator. I don't work at the USDA. I'm
Yeah.
a markets guy. Like the second I get done with this video, I'm going to go trade 5,000 ounces of silver. That's what I do for a living, and I'm a broker. But they're listening, and there are some serious complaints with this bill, Jim.
Well, on the wheat side, I'm just talking last year's crop. When I was in
Mhm.
Kansas in December, the Kansas wheat producers there didn't think they were in the same state because they had relatively continued rainfall throughout the season, and they're not used to that, Tommy. So you had a lot of wheat in Kansas, so that's a good thing. At least they had the bushels, but
Mhm.
help is on the way because the one big beautiful bill has a significant increase, at least in the reference price for wheat. So at least the safety net is getting better for the wheat side there. Going back to the NCGA, their point number 4 is interest rates and the macro environment backdrop. And monetary policy, we know, Tommy, can tip the balance
Oh,
between
absolutely.
a manageable cash flow and razor thin margins. And we have a federal open market committee, FOMC meeting near the end of this month. I can almost to tell you that there's not quite 100%, but we're close to 100% that there will be no change in the Fed's interest rate. That's because we had a jobs report out Friday that
Correct.
really increased the likelihood that there would be no change. But that doesn't mean there won't be any further interest rates cuts this calendar year. Most people say 2, if not 3 further cuts as the year goes on. But we have a CPI report, Consumer Price Index report this week, and that'll be also important relative to the Fed's decision because it'll determine whether or not there's been any progress on that sticky inflation that we've seen. And you can see where the federal funds rate are down from the cycle high there in our chart in 2024. So the trend is our friend there. Interest rates are lower and they're going to go lower. By this time next year, they'll be a percent to a percentage point and a half lower. At the
Mhm.
Minnesota, at the Pam Vipon meeting, one of her sons who helped run the company, I always love family-owned companies, I really do, and she has some great partners working with her. One of them mentioned, and I think it bears merit, that don't forget loan economics because
Okay.
USDA's rate is really lower than prevailing market interest rate. So if you do need a loan, look at that FSA office loan because it's got a fairly attractive interest rate for cash flow, if nothing else, Tommy.
Oh, absolutely. Also, while you were traveling, you might not have caught this. I think you did, but Trump did that thing. I was trading one day, and he said we're going to buy 200 billion worth of mortgage-backed bonds through Fannie and Freddie,
Yeah.
and that popped the bond market. When I say pop the border trade bond market, that actually means rates went down. He out of nowhere kind of did QE5 haphazardly through a tweet or a True Social. Did you catch that, Jim?
I did, and it did have immediate impact. Number one, because it caught analysts and traders off guard, so that was one point. And two, it made sense. That's
Hmm.
a chunk of money, and it drove down real interest rates for the real
Jim.
estate sector. And that's Scott Bessent and the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and others in his administration saying, we've got to get this housing market turned around because housing and energy drives this country. The
100%.
housing market, once you get the new purchases going on, whether it's a new home or an older home, Tommy, you automatically go out to a Home Depot or whatever and buy things for your new house. And that
Correct.
just, it just fuels the economy. Trump knows that, but that was a good sign that we need to get. That's an innovative program that what he came up with. So I
Let,
applaud that move.
let's go back 1 minute. Are you saying that a Trump Truth Social caught traders off guard? Come
Absolutely.
on, Jim.
Absolutely, it did. They were it was
I
now they
know.
didn't like the other one that he did is that they
Oh,
don't want
the other one.
institutions to own housing.
Yeah.
That didn't go over so well. So
We're
he
we're
was batting 1 for 2, but that's still 500 in this town.
we're going off the rails. But then on Friday, he said there's going to be no interest rates on credit cards higher than 10%. I'm going to
10%.
get this worked out. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I'll believe
Okay.
that when I see it. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Don't
Okay.
hold your breath on that one.
So that was interest rates. We talked about that. Let's go to USMCA review is a
Demand
demand what?
part.
Yeah, what's that mean, Jim?
Well, look at that chart. It
Okay.
shows you that the Canada, US, and Mexico are vital partners. And look at the US corn export success. The USMCA is working. So I just hope the Trump administration realizes that and doesn't follow it up. We have a North American market. Yes, it's not perfect, but we have good allies in Canada and Mexico, and this just shows it. Look at the impact of corn exports in the USMCA, which is $6.1 billion. The rest of the world is $10.3 billion. That's enough said. Our Canadian and Mexican friends are big purchasers of U.S. corn. That's your bottom line right there. And it
Yeah.
should continue because we're going to go through huffs and puffs in the USMCA renegotiation that really begins in earnest. July of this year, we could have 1 year annual extensions as all countries try to get leverage. But USMCA, as far as I'm concerned, is here to stay, and that's a good thing.
Let's go to the next one. Ethanol expansion is the fastest demand lever.
That's why, as much like soybeans in the sustainable aviation fuel and the biodiesel and renewable diesel, in corn, ethanol remains the most scalable near-term demand catalyst. And it's got some big low carbon uses shaping longer term growth. In the chart we show motor gasoline use is estimated to decline over time. Well, we know that the renewable fuel standard is based on gasoline consumed. So that means the mandated level is not going to increase. But this is where the higher octane rebranding of ethanol is going to kick in. And this is why we need year-round E15. We need really E20 or above, because look at the increase in corn utilization if you go from E10 to E15. That's a 50% increase just right there. It's a very, very important aspect. And I think that you will see, Tommy, in a must-pass bill, probably by the end of this month, finally, Congress will codify, not just the administration in an executive order. I think Congress is going to codify year-round E15, and that's a step in the right direction, because the corn growers have the American Petroleum Institute back on board in support of that initiative. So the odds now are increasing that we're finally going to see it. So what's the bottom line of that NCGA's economist report? They see 2026 as a year of tight margins driven by abundant supply and increased costs. And they say the path to stabilization runs through policy and demand. Safeguarding USMCA, which we went through, expanding ethanol blends now, and positioning ethanol for new markets ahead with E15, E20, year-round E15, sustainable aviation and fuel. How all those levers move is going to determine, Tommy, whether corn prices just tread water or begin to recover. There's your secret in the corn market right there.
Sounds good. We need it to recover, Jim. SCOTUS decision ahead on Trump trade policy. That's this Wednesday, folks. That could
Yeah,
be a big deal.
well, some people thought it was going to be Friday, Tommy, and
Yeah.
I wrote that we could get it as early as Friday, and I would say the same thing. We could get it as early as Wednesday. It's not a for sure thing, but it's a
Oh, okay.
major topic because it's going to determine the constitutionality or lack thereof of President Trump's trade policy. So it depends what lawyer you talk with. 75% of the betting markets,
The betting markets, yeah.
yeah, they're thinking that it'll go against the Trump administration. I'm not so sure. I think this is a conservative tilted Supreme Court. But let's just say Trump does lose this case. Kevin Hassett, the National Economic Council director, and Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, say they're ready to go with alternatives that will be more cumbersome. It won't be as easy to implement Trump's aggressive trade policy. Now, here's one where I get wherever I go from farmers in a question. Has there been true additionality of increases in exports of U.S. farm commodities as a result of all the hoops that we've been trying to go through in Trump's trade policy? And it's a fair question and a hard one. And I say we don't have the evidence yet. Now, in the case of ethanol, we can cite additionality, increased exports, increased trade. Two, in the case of rice for Japan, we have an increase in their market share in Japan, but I think the verdict is still out, Tommy, on whether or not it's going to be true additionality for trade.
And you keep seeing them hedging their bet with Bessent and also the former
Greer,
head of Cantor
Jameson Greer,
Jameson Greer, and also the former head of Cantor Fitzgerald, the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
Yeah.
They're all like, well, there's a lot of things we can do. All right, speaking of things we can do, this is a hot topic: Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, Russia. What's the Oh boy, this could be a show in itself. Go ahead.
Well, news on Venezuela this coming week, we could see a reduction in some of the sanctions or protection of Venezuela. So that means, although we're going to be there a while, I've been asked that a lot. Venezuela is very important in the Western Hemisphere for the United States. Of course, it has a lot to do with oil. Yes, there's your chess game. And what we had, Iran's flaring up because of the protest over there. And Trump has already said, if you kill people, and they have killed people, you can get a figure of 200 to as many as 500 people killed in Iran. The news today on Sunday is that the White House is reviewing options relative to Iran. There won't be troops on the ground in Iran, but watch for action in the next week or so on Iran. Then Cuba. I think the clock is ticking on Cuba. Yeah, 90 miles off of our Florida coast, and because Venezuela protected, vice versa, they helped each other. Mm-hmm. Well, now with the boycotting of oil going from Venezuela into Cuba, the clock is ticking. Tommy, they're gonna fold. I don't know when. It's probably not going to be as soon as what the White House thinks, but you can't keep going without oil in any country, and Cuba's trying to, and they won't. So you group all of this together, and of course mention Russia too, because here's your potential market significance of Russia right now. We well know that they're in a war that they started with Ukraine. Now there's a bill in Congress being spearheaded in the Senate that would invoke 500, you heard that right, percent tariffs on countries purchasing oil from Russia.
Wow.
Now, just think through this. I've got a story coming up later today in my week ahead that if that's the case, China's a big purchaser of Russian oil. Does that mean we're going to put a lot more tariffs back onto China? And if that's the case, here we go all over again relative to the U.S. soybean fisticuffs in the trade environment. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying this bill is something to
Yeah, that
watch
would be wild.
because if they pass it, don't be surprised of the market reaction if it's going to go through. Okay, and then grouping all these countries together, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, Russia. A number of farmers recently have said, are we doing too much too fast? I said, Trump would say no. He just knows that we have to move. He thinks he has to move pretty fast. But there's a growing mindset in I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican that I'm starting to hear saying, boy, I can hardly even keep up with
Oh
what's
yeah.
going on in the world. So they're just saying this is just increasing the element of uncertainty, Tommy, and a lot of people just don't like that. They're tired, they're exhausted of this stuff. So,
So much going on. All right. Happier subject. Farm Bureau annual convention. Rollins speaks Monday.
Rollins speaks late Monday afternoon. Tippy Duvall from the head of Farm Bureau. Yeah, it's going to be curious to see what Brooke Rollins says. Now, when she gives speeches to actual farm groups, okay,
Mm-hmm.
she usually has a 3 or 5 point plan. So I would listen to what she's going to say relative to her perspective on the outlook. Will there be additional aid from the administration? Unlikely. How are the aid programs going to roll out? Remember, by February the 28th, they'll start paying out the $11 billion in bridge payments, Tommy. And I think that they'll meet that if not sooner. Because it's a fairly straightforward calculation. So we're going to have to listen to what she says on the future. Let's just hope she doesn't say we're going into the golden era, because we need to come out of this ditch first
When
before
she
you
says
talk
we're
about
going in the golden age, the golden age,
golden age.
what
Yeah.
the hell?
But now
Yeah.
Tippy Duvall spoke today, and he said what most of us have heard before, that he thinks the $11 billion plus $1 billion for specialty crops and sugar is just not enough, especially for specialty crops. I
Mm-hmm.
heard that in Minnesota, and I heard from producers who were losing at least $300 an acre in North Dakota and Minnesota,
Horrible.
if not more. If not more. And a lot of the sugar producers told me about their concern about tier 2 sugar coming in from a number of countries, that they're paying the extra tariffs in order to bring more sugar in, and that's putting downward pressure on U.S. sugar prices. But Duvall from Farm Bureau also said that he pushed a year-round E15. And he says some farm state lawmakers should legislate another economic aid program because, frankly, he said it's needed. So there were his major items in his speech. It wasn't surprising, but at least the leader of the largest farm group is saying that, and the farm state lawmakers listen to that.
Mm-hmm. What city do you have Rollins speaking in on Monday?
2:30. She's speaking at 2:30
From
on Monday.
DC or? Okay.
No, she's there. She's there.
Oh, she's at the.
Yeah,
Okay,
and there's
gotcha.
going to be a farm panel too. I think GT Thompson, maybe. I guess Bozeman's there.
Mm.
Maybe the ranking people, Klobuchar, and Angie Craig from the House side. There's GT. Now, GT. Speaking of GT, he wants to get a farm bill, a skinny farm bill, Farm Bill 2.0. Voted on in the House in February. He used to say January. Well, it ain't going to be this month. So we're going to see. I still think it's an uphill battle to get a skinny farm bill through because of the animosity on the Democratic side that they don't like the cuts that the Republicans made in food stamp program and some in the conservation area. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't think we're going to see a Farm Bill 2.0 this year. They'll just kick the can down the road and extend it another year.
Yeah, you mentioned Klobuchar. That's our next headline. Will Senator Amy Klobuchar enter race to Minnesota governor? Minnesota's been all over the news while you were out speaking.
Oh, and I sat down and talked with a number of those Minnesota growers, and there wasn't one, Tommy, who said they supported her running for the governor's race. They like her, and they think that she'll have more clout continuing to be a ranking member in the Democratic Party in the Senate. And if the Democrats were to regain control of the Senate, although unlikely in my judgment, and if they were, she would be the Senate Ag Committee chairwoman. And they like her because they think that she at least works in part with the opposing party. She's more practical than a lot of other members of the Democratic Party, and widespread support I saw in Minnesota for Amy Klobuchar. We're going to see whether or not now she can still keep her Senate spot if she runs for governor until if she does run and win it. Of course, then she has to relinquish her Senate post. But at first, I thought she would go for that Senate for the governor's race. Now I'm not quite so sure. Would you want to go into the morass called Minnesota right now? No,
No, it's
because
toxic.
she's going to be bogged down. Now she was a prosecutor, so she knows what she's doing in that regard. But boy, that's a minefield there. That I don't know whether you'd want to jump into. But that's what I picked up on Amy Klobuchar, a good lawmaker, one of the ones we need more of, especially in Minnesota. And that they just hope that she doesn't run for the governor's race.
And I know what everyone's thinking. Are they going to talk about the shooting? I got to tell you, Jim, that happened so fast. It just happened too fast. People got to calm down, take a deep breath. We should be able to talk this out. I know as a little kid, I've been pulled over so many damn times for speeding. My dad's like, just obey what they say.
Yes.
And I would never go into a toxic environment like that where there's a lot of energy and want to be involved in that. Why are people going to these rallies? And I'll tell you what, in Valparaiso, Indiana, every Saturday at our courthouse, I live in the township, like where for the Porter County where our courthouse is, that they have people out there every weekend. There's about 20 demonstrators who have their opinions, no kings, no this, no that. And then there's one guy who stands across the street with a sign that says they're all nuts, and everyone honks. It goes crazy. But I got to put a video of that up. But
one Minnesota farmer asked me, Jim, do you think it's safer being on the streets of downtown DC or downtown Minneapolis?
Oh, DC.
And I said DC. Yeah. And the downside of that is, I used to go to Minneapolis 2 to 3 times a year, and I like Minneapolis.
I love Minneapolis.
For meetings, for farmer meetings. And after the George Floyd thing, a lot of meetings were just cut off because of the perceived lack of security downtown. Then it started to come back up where they started to have more meetings, and I attended a number. And Minneapolis, my favorite airport, by the way. I use it a lot to go to different places, and they keep improving it, so they do it right there. But I just hate for the city of Minneapolis, St. Paul, that I think companies are going to pull back again because they don't like
that
any
leads
threat.
me to the next question. We're going down a rabbit hole, but I think that's why we do this show, right?
Yeah.
We don't work for anyone. No one's going to pull the show. It's our damn show. So let's talk about it. Where did all the money go in Minnesota? They had a lot of extra money. It's all gone, and they're running a deficit. Successful business owners I know in Minnesota are out and out pissed, Jim. You got any color on that?
Yeah, but where were the data checks? And you tell me that Tim Walz did not know? I mean, it's just, I took too many logic classes in college. So there should be an investigation of that. And although you don't say a particular group is guilty, there are a lot of guilty people that need to pay for what they have done. And it's
Mhm.
already factored into USDA programs. Remember, this is federal
Yeah.
fraud.
Mhm.
So
Correct.
USDA announced
Rollins came out late Friday. Yeah.
late
Yes, sir.
Friday, almost $200 million pulling back
Mhm.
into certain aid programs for Minnesota. Bottom line, the fraud numbers are huge, Tommy, and this again, it's added to the morass of Minnesota. You just hate to see it, but where were the checks and balances? Where were the agencies? Like in federal, you have Office of Management and Budget. In the private industry, you have annual reports that you have firms that check on you, with see if everything's kosher. You don't lose this much money to fraud and not have any have an independent reporter find it out initially,
Mhm.
as opposed to the mainstream press. Where was the Minneapolis Star Tribune all these months
I
on
mean, they
that, to be
misspelled
blunt?
learning on that sign. That's not a joke, Jim. I think people think that was like, AI. They literally had a learning center, and the word learning was
Yeah,
misspelled.
I
That's
just
been
hate
since closed, by the way.
Yeah, I just hate to see it for the good people of Minnesota. So they
Yeah.
need to get their act cleaned up together, but it's going to take a long time.
Yeah. I'll give
But
you a little
that's
more.
why you have all these investigations and fraud. I mean, there's huge amounts of fraud. We don't even know the bottom line yet. Bottom line.
I got a little more color of that, and you were traveling. You might not have caught this one. I'm trying to stump you this week. Did you see this guy said, if you are receiving government aid, we are not going to allow you to wire money outside the country through the Treasury. Did you see that one?
No, I did not see
I
that.
got
That's
you. I
interesting.
got you. All
Yeah,
right, I'll send that
yeah,
one to you. Yeah, that'll stop. Like if there's people living in this country and they're only doing it to get money and send back to their home country, he said, if you need government aid, no problem. You're not wiring this money out.
yeah. Use it internally and
Yeah,
for what
I'll
it
send
was
you that
meant to
story.
be.
Okay. We went off the rails, but I thought it was important to talk about. I flew here. I had new Elon Musk internet on the United Airlines flight, and I couldn't look at Facebook because listen, folks, if you have an opinion, put your damn name on the ballot, right? Don't go on Facebook and save the world. Go run for office and
Yeah.
take the ultimate oath and responsibility, or start a podcast or do something, but everyone's fighting with everyone. Oh, it's horrible. Anyway, back to the show. Let's get something happy here. This makes me happy. I'm always happy to be with you. Dietary guidelines. I like talking about food. Let's do it.
Okay. Uh, they came out and the soybean growers, when I was down with them, they had a mixed opinion, because while the protein side, they
Mhm.
were in favor. You can see that this is an inverted pyramid. Normally we have the pyramid the other way, but to me, I think this looks like a piece of pizza when you go through it. But it tells you the significance of what they're trying to do here. Protein, dairy, and healthy fats scored. They were the winners in this one.
Okay.
And vegetable and fruits are winners, but not as much as they have in prior recommendation reports. But what soybean growers did not like is that the seeds, the oil seeds, that they did not favor.
Okay. Oh,
So
yeah.
in the ultra processed foods, or highly processed foods, came under attack, which we knew. Now,
That'd be the sugar to people and
sugar
everything.
is
Yeah.
very, yeah. I told the soybean growers, at least you're not sugar. I mean, this report was very detrimental to sugar, and we've had RFK Jr., the head of HHS,
Mhm.
say before, sugar is poison. Of course, it's not poison, but that tells you where the sugar market's at
Mm.
relative to the recommendations and his bias against sugar. But to put this together, Tommy, uh, most Americans look at the pyramid and things like that, but they'll eat what they want anyway. However, this is important relative to school food and nutrition programs in the
Like the
government,
dietary guidelines you have here?
absolutely, the dietary guidelines, and it does affect the consumption, food stamp programs, etc. So
Mm.
this has a big big impact. So again, winners are meat and dairy because they explicitly promote full fat dairy, and recommend X number of proteins of body weight per day, and the antagonist, the food policy activists like Marion Nestle, she said she didn't like this, and she said these take us back to the diets of the 1950s when everyone was eating lots of meat and dairy and not
Have you
worrying
seen
much
a
about
picture of what
vegetables.
people look like in 1950 on a beach versus what they look like in 2025?
You
They
got
look like a
something?
bunch of whales washed up, for God's sake. Me being one of them.
They look like
Jesus,
a
I
group.
gotta step in here.
They look like me. On
And
alcohol,
us.
yeah, the updated advice drops specific
Uh-oh.
daily limits for men
Oh
and women,
no. Are you
with the
kidding me?
general message consume less alcohol for better overall health. So
This is
that
getting
was actually a
worse.
winner for alcohol, Tommy.
Oh, it was?
Mixed bag, heart health. Major
Oh.
health groups broadly welcome their focus on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and reduced added sugar. But the American Heart Association, who's going toe to toe against RFK Jr., they cautioned against heavy promotion of red meat and full fat dairy. But that's the way it is. And fruits and vegetables, their advocates say the recommendations are largely unchanged. Now, the losers, as I said before, are processed foods. They
Look at
call
this
for
chart. Yeah.
sharply limiting those highly processed foods. And that's what I think that you'll hear Brooke Rollins say.
I don't see any Doritos on this pie chart here.
No.
I love
But
Doritos.
they stopped short of adopting the formal ultra processed definition. Yeah, we still don't have a definition. And that's going to come out in a future Make America Healthy MAHA report later this year. So what's the bottom line? The up and down food pyramid, it definitely reshapes federal nutrition advice, Tommy, by elevating protein and full fat dairy. So it's good for portions of the ag sector, and it promotes whole foods while easing alcohol limits, but it takes aim at processed products. So whether it improves public health or deepens confusion, it's going to depend on how consumers, but more importantly, school and federal meal programs interpret and implement. There's your other key. Implement, because schools are saying, it's going to take us a while to implement this. And I think we have that table. Do you have that up?
This one, the dietary guidelines?
Yeah. Let me just go through. This
Okay.
is from food activist Marion Nestle, Food Politics. She went through some of these, or kind of, what does all this mean? How does this compare to the last report on dietary guidelines that covered 2020 to 2025 versus this report that covers 2025 to 2030? The number of pages in the prior report was almost 150 pages, Tommy. This time, only 10 pages. Only 10 pages. Protein sees an increase in protein in the diets for this time. Dairy was about the same. Vegetables and fruits are actually a decrease in the volume of recommendations per day. Fats, they want to prioritize animal sources, and this is what's got the soybean people upset. Saturated fat, about the same. Grains decrease, but prioritize whole grains. Processed foods are a major improvement to limit and avoid those processed foods. Added sugar, limit, if not avoid them. So stronger. Sodium was about the same. Alcohol, it's weaker. So eat more animal source foods, full fat dairy, vegetables, fruits, health, fats, butter, beef, tallow, whole grains. Eat less of added sugars, refined grains, chemical additives, fruit and vegetable juices, highly processed foods and beverages, sodium, and alcohol. So there's, in a nutshell, what they put out. Some winners and losers.
And the way my fitness friend describes it is, when you go to the grocery store, stay in the outside aisles, almost never go on the inside, and you'll be one of the healthiest people you know. And I think that's what you just described, Jim.
I hear a lot of people tell me that, and you can see I don't.
I see it's working with you. I see it's working with you. Speaking on the food thing, we got to talk while you were on your travels. Screw worms not going away. It looks to be getting worse, not better. No more talk of the border opening, and we need to be talking about how we're going to control or what our measures are when it gets here. If it's not here already, maybe we'll get some comments below. Someone will say, you're starting trouble. But yeah, Jim, it's a matter of if, not when.
I would tell you, if you don't reopen the border relatively soon, the story of this year is going to be, if you think meat prices are high now, you haven't seen
Hmm.
anything yet. By about the middle of the year, you're going to have a significant increase in the prices again. And that's when President Trump will again be frustrated, but maybe by that time he'll understand that it takes at least 2 years for the cattle cycle to turn around from an inventory perspective. Now we can get some more beef coming in from Brazil, and China kind of took action to limit the amount of meat coming into their country, especially beef, and that's affected Australia, Brazil, etc. That means some potential more meat coming into the United States, but it doesn't make up for all those animals that we used to get coming in, Tommy, from Mexico. So as far as the screwworm, yeah, we're done with picking a month of when the border will reopen. We're down to what conditions will it take in order for USDA to announce a reopening of the border. So they're going to
Hmm.
be very careful, and they should be careful before they reopen the border. And even when they do, it's going to be a phased in reopening, and it's going to go a lot slower than most people think. So, from a market perspective, we're going to have a relatively firm cattle market in the months ahead, at least for 6 months.
Okay, I threw this last one in there. I saw this tweet before when I was getting on a plane in O'Hare Airport. Kind of made me giggle. By the way, well, let me read it to you for those listening on Spotify and Apple. There are more people at Soldier Field for the Bears Packers playoff game than the entire population of Greenland thought. So I got a a map of Greenland. It's a massive piece of land. I don't know how many acres or hectares. I can Google that while you're talking. I will do that. Full disclosure, folks, I'm embarrassed to tell you this. I'm an old man. I went to bed at halftime. I had no clue what happened the second half. I had a bunch of texts from various Vikings fans who I don't know if they hate the Packers or the Bears more,
They
but
hate the Packers more, I
I
think.
know, I know. And hell of a comeback. Hey, to
It
be
was 18. They were 18-point deficit, by the way, and they came back. Yeah,
never
I
give
know.
up, never give in.
I learned with the Bears. I don't know why it is. They come back like that.
Hmm.
You sooner or later you lose a game like that, but they're a fun team to watch. On your quote perspective, yes, the
Hmm.
population is spot on,
Oh,
but
that
it's
that
what's
one for me.
under that ground, Tommy,
Yeah,
that's important in Greenland. The
yeah.
precious minerals, but it's also where it's at. Look at the strategic area. It's called the Northwest Passage. And this is why China and Russia, ever since we've had the melting of the Arctic ice, uh, this whole Arctic region is elevated in importance, and Trump knows that. Will we buy Greenland? I doubt it. I think that there's currently a 1951 U.S. Denmark agreement that has Greenland in it, by the way, that
Hmm.
I think would give the U.S. most of what they want: security, aspects to go in at a certain time. But Greenland wants to be free of Denmark anyway. So I think they would be more willing to talk about a possible deal, not purchase of their country. But I'm not going to underestimate the strategic importance from a foreign policy perspective. I think Trump is correct that we need safeguards to watch so those nuclear submarines of China and Russia don't get too unfair advantage of watching our country that way. So it's an important area, and Trump, one way or another, will eventually get what he wants for the protection in a national security basis.
Hmm. And As Joe Rogan has his young Jamie who looks up facts, they always say, Jamie, pull that up on the screen. Jamie, look that up. Well, Tommy here looked it up. Let's talk in acres because I think that's what our crowd would understand best. Greenland is officially, I'm going to ask you, it's okay, wrong answers only, please. How many million acres do you think Greenland is?
I have no idea, honestly.
535 million acres. That's how big Greenland is. That's more than the corn, beans, wheat. I mean, that is massive land. But to keep in perspective, 80% of that is ice. So 80% Greenland's ice, 535 million acres. Folks, that's a big chunk of land.
It is. But again, it's the location where it's at. And from a nuclear submarine issue, and you just have to be protected in that way. And I think that we will eventually. And that's what Trump says brought. Remember, he even talked about Greenland during Trump 1.0.
Yeah, he took his own private plane there. Remember, in between, I remember his son said, we just touched down in Greenland. This was before the last election when he wasn't president. Yeah, wild times.
So that's where we're at on that. We've got a lot of foreign policy issues in the hopper right now, and it's not going to go away. I have to cover it almost nonstop because of it can flare into the commodity prices. As I said earlier in the show, Tommy, if you go back into putting sanctions on people who purchase Russian oil, that includes China. And if that occurs, we're right back into they'll pull back on the purchases of U.S. farm commodities. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that's a possibility. That's a possibility. But let's end it as we always do, at least on a high note. Tomorrow's report, Monday's 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time report from USDA is going to determine the baseline for corn, soybeans, and to a degree wheat, not only from the final size of the 2025 crop, but we're going to look at demand and have a better way to project the demand for the year ahead, and it'll help determine the acreage competition to a degree. That's how important this report is. So watch us next week. We'll have the implications of the report.
Sounds good. Okay, Jim, thank you so much. You've been watching Wiesemeyer's Perspectives here on the Ag Bull Podcast. Jim, I'm glad we got this together. You've been traveling like a madman. Real quick, where are you going this week and next week?
Menominee, Wisconsin, to a crop insurance meeting. Armed Services, I know, Mark Bushman there. And it's hard to get to Menominee from Minneapolis Airport. In fact, rather than rent a car, I may just take an Uber, because by the time you rent a car nowadays, it's almost still cheaper to get an Uber. But I've been there before. It's a good group, and that gives me the ground truth, Tommy. It's where I get ideas from farmers and grain producers and livestock producers, and I know you get the same, and you get feedback one way or the other on some of the, and I can see the growing number of viewers and listeners to our podcast, and that's always good to know. And from that, we're hitting the issues, and I always tell them, if we're not covering an issue that you think we should, let us know. And you listeners out there, do the same. Just email or whatever, and
or hit the Ag Bull website.
We'll look into the situation. Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll see you next week, my friend.
See ya.